Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is a Blue Point Juniper. This is Blue Point Juniper, an upright growing Christmas tree shaped evergreen with blue-green foliage. Blue Point can reach 10 to 15 feet in height and 3 to 5 feet in width right at the base. Blue Point junipers, like most junipers, are extremely cold hardy. This plant can grow all the way up into zone 4 and then down to zone 9, which have vastly different winter temperatures. Blue Point junipers have a moderate growth rate. We might be able to get 6 or 8 inches of growth out of these in a year, which is actually pretty fast, but compared to some of the other upright conifers that people use as screening plants like leylands or green giants, it's actually quite slow. But I actually prefer these for sure. They're much hardier. They anchor themselves a lot better, and they're a lot more drought tolerant. In terms of sun or shade on Blue Point junipers, we're definitely going to want to lean towards sun, and the more sun the better, really. You need at least a half a day sun all the way up to full sun. This is not a plant that would perform well in the shade at all, and the shade might even be wet, and that would definitely be an issue. There are a lot of different places we can use Blue Point junipers. This plant makes an absolutely perfect corner specimen plant on the corner of your house. It'll get too tall for any other place on your foundation, but absolutely perfect on the corner. It can be used out in open space as like a Christmas tree. Really, this thing could be decorated even in the wintertime. And then it can also be used as a screening plant. You can use this pretty effectively as a border plant, and junipers tend to be a lot more drought tolerant than a lot of the other conifers you'd use, like green giants or leylands, or, you know, I could go on and on. Emerald arborvitae especially. This thing is way more drought tolerant than emerald arborvitae. And if I were using it as a screen, I'd definitely pick Blue Point over emerald or DeGroote's arborvitae or the other upright growing thujas. The two main features of Blue Point junipers is one, it grows in this perfect Christmas tree shape, but the other is this quite attractive blue-green coloration. On the older growth here down in the center of the plant is much bluer, and this new growth is kind of a lime green color. And it's really a beautiful contrast, and it keeps that contrast year round. The main consideration when planting a Blue Point juniper is going to be that it stays kind of high and dry. This plant would not like it in a wet space at all, and even in a space you think dries out between waterings, we're going to want to elevate this thing some. So when you dig the hole, dig at the depth of the root ball, and then if you have clay soils, I would mix in some pine bark soil conditioner. It's what we're growing these in, and use that 50-50 with the clay. So if whatever clay you pull out of that hole, let's mix a 50-50 mix with the bark and the clay. If you have very sandy soils, you're in like a coastal area or something like that, you might want to mix some peat moss or some compost or something in with it to retain a little bit of water. But really the main issue here is that we're not going to stay wet in between rains is our bigger concern, and clay would definitely do that. So dig the hole the depth of the root ball, and about twice the width of the root ball. Make your little soil mix. Put some of that back in the bottom of the hole so that when you pull this plant out and set it into the hole, it actually sticks up about this much above the original soil line. Put the rest of our soil up to the edge of it, tamp it down, and then lightly mulch this plant. Do not put any mulch up on the trunk of this plant. That will be a serious issue. You'll end up at some point either inviting pests, to the base of this plant, or overwatering it. Another issue you may face when you're planting your Blue Point junipers is when you pull this out of the container, it's almost certainly going to be root bound, meaning the roots are going to be wrapped tightly together. So when you pull it out of the container, pull it though some and try to get them going outward a little more and stop wrapping around one another. If it's really, really bad, you can take a knife or a shovel and cut from top to bottom in about 3 places. Once your Blue Point junipers are established, they're seldom going to need additional water. If it's on a foundation, like on a corner of a foundation, almost certainly not. If it was used as a screening plant and I was trying to get some growth out of it and get it up to the size I wanted it, maybe if it became dry during the summer, I would water them. You could consider putting in a drip hose when you plant these and be able to plug a water hose into it and water them. Do not put this on any automated irrigation system. You will almost certainly discolor them for sure by overwatering them and likely kill them at some point. Blue Point junipers are acid-loving plants. Any slow-release fertilizer for acid-loving plants would work great on these to keep this rich contrast between this blue and green coloration. I would do it in the early spring, and while you're trying to establish them as a screen, you might be able to do it again in the early summer. Once you get them up to the height you need them, I just do it in the early spring every year, something that'll last 3 or 4 months. One of the nicest things about a Blue Point juniper is it really doesn't have to be shaped. It kind of takes this natural Christmas tree shape on its own. If you got some crazy limb growing out of the side of it, you could prune that off anytime you want to. If it got taller than you needed it, this is a plant that you could shear back some of the height out of, but probably, you know, might look a little weird for a while. It'll take a little while for a conifer to recover if you strip too much of the foliage off of it. One issue with this plant, luckily you're not going to have to touch this plant very much, but one issue with it is it's kind of prickly when you touch it, so wear gloves when you're pruning it or handling it. Blue Point junipers rarely have many pests. If you put this in an area that stayed abnormally wet, almost certainly you would end up with root rot issues and some other issues you could get from that. Junipers are susceptible to spider mites. We really typically don't see them on happy, healthy plants. So if you got this in a bed and you haven't over mulched it and you're not drowning it, you're probably not going to see many of those problems. And Blue Point junipers are definitely in the deer resistant category. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the blue-green foliage, upright, Christmas tree shape Blue Point juniper. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also, comment below with any questions you have about Blue Point junipers. Thanks again.